Good evening, dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
Nice to hear your voice in person, such as it is.
Yeah. As close as we can get for the moment.
Yeah.
Be awfully hard to string some cans that far.
Yeah.
We'd love to, though. I want to get over that way.
You'd be very welcome.
Yeah. Well, I went to your country.
Yeah.
Sort of. Went to the Republic anyway.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
When was that?
1996.
Oh, that was a while back.
Oh, yeah.
Very different country in that time. It's changed a lot.
Yeah. I was in the South. I was in Kinsale on honeymoon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
My brother used to live in Kinsale.
Oh,
in
really?
Cork, yeah.
Cork's a great city, too. I love it there.
Yeah. That's where my mother's family are from. They're from that county.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So, yeah, I have a lot of connections down there. I know the place very well.
Nice.
You're in the North now, right?
Yeah.
Were you born there?
Yeah. Well, I was actually born in London.
Oh, okay.
My mother and father were immigrants into London.
Oh, okay.
You know, as a lot of Irish did. They left in the 60s. So there wasn't much. Ireland was a very impoverished country at that time, and
Right.
so a lot of people left. And one of the places that a lot of them went to was London, and they met there. So my father's from here, where I live now in the North, and my mother was from Cork, and they met and they got married. They had me. Then they came home.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to go to. They were going to emigrate to Australia, and they came home to say goodbye to my father's family, and my mother fell in love with the place, and she said she wants to stay here. So that's why I ended up here instead of Australia, which I'm glad about because I love it here. You know?
Yeah.
We've got friends both places.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, in Australia as well.
I don't mean to offend any Australians. I'm sure.
Oh, no.
I'm sure Australians.
Home is home.
Home is home. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Although in the North at that time it was the Tribbles were on the war thing, and so it was a very messy situation, but still, nonetheless, it's home, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were even told in the 90s, we were visiting the Republic. They're like, you might want to stay out of Belfast still. It's a little bit dicey. But I mean, you grew up there, I guess, then in the 80s, probably. I'm guessing.
Yeah. 70s, 80s. I remember, even the place I live now is where I grew up. I mean, like the literal street. Estate. We call them estates, but I don't know what the American equivalent of that is, but I know that you have them. I remember the British Army and the IRA having shootouts in the street. As a kid, you could hear them fighting at night. And
holy shit!
Yeah, and you would just, as a kid, you would be out on your bicycle, and you'd be going around the corner, and you just see all this riot would just be happening. And you're like, oh shit!
Oh Jesus!
Was there like a lot of pressure to take a side or anything like that at the time?
Well, that's a part of the problem. The side is actually built in. Because if you're a Catholic, you're on one side, and if you were a Protestant, you were on the other. Now, that has changed a lot, thankfully. But, if you were a Catholic, I was born, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore, but so I would be would have been the Irish side. And then if you're a Protestant, you would have been the pro-British side. So, and it goes back, I don't even want to, it's so boring and long, but it goes back like 800 years, and There's lots of historical precedent and reasons as to why those the divisions were drawn along those lines. But so you sort of were on a side whether you liked it or not.
Right. It wasn't about where you lived; it was about how you were born.
Well, that as well. So all Catholics, the country was ghettoized. So all Catholics live together, and then all Protestants live together, and quite often never the twain shall meet. People would go large parts of their lives, their working lives, their daily lives, and they would never have any interaction with people on the so-called other side of the bar. It was actually, if you boil it down to its real core, it's just a classic divide and rule situation is what it was.
Yeah.
Which is being committed. It's committed by governments and interests all over the world still to this day. You know, you divide the people along class lines, race lines, gender lines,
sure,
whatever, and you know, it's just that. But it was a big version of that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty typical of the imperialist ideal. Then, you know, just now reminds me of Rwanda and the idea of the Hutu and the Tutsis. You know,
yes,
the Dutch coming in there and basically looking at this all same race of African people and saying, you know, well, this is a different strain of African person, and this is a different strain.
These are ours,
right?
Yeah, but that's exactly the same. I mean, the British did that in India as well. You know,
yeah,
they've done it everywhere. They did it. You know, they would, as you said, it's a part of the imperialist strategy and game plan. They go in and they point and say they go and find a division. They go which tribal or which clan.
Right.
You know, he has a beef with this guy, so they'll go and then one of the things that they also did was they would arm one side, which creates an arms race among, and so they're busy having an arms race, fighting themselves. Meanwhile, they're looting your country.
Yeah, right.
That's classic. Yeah.
It's just all that shit. You know, it's still going on. I suppose the good thing for me personally is that whenever I see it happening in other places, I'm immediately able to identify it for what I believe that it is. You know, and I tend not to get too sucked into. You know, I think I'm able to see around the corner with a lot of these things now.
Right.
Yeah. It took me a while to come to that realization too, just after studying history in college. And even for America, it's like, we like to think that, you know, we defeated the British in the war. And there was a lot more of them just saying, you know what, it's a lot easier just to let these people rule themselves and take all their money. You know, they're like, it's a pain in the ass to go like 3 weeks across the ocean every time we got to send an army over there. They're like, fuck it, just let them, you know, rule themselves and we'll just tax the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is kind of brilliant, really.
Evil, but brilliant. Yeah.
Evil, but brilliant. Yeah.
Well, it really is. From their perspective, it must be, you have to give them credit. It works. And they have it down pat. They know exactly how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
They also, a thing that they're able to do that we don't give them, well, I don't want to use the word credit, but you don't give, I'm going to, that we should give them credit for, is they're very, very patient.
Yeah.
And they're able to wait decades for results.
Yeah.
You know?
In the long game.
Generations, yeah.
Yeah, really? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to it is. It just...
Oh, no.
No, it's just interesting to talk about, you know, and I'm sure it's probably less interesting for you to talk about living through it as you do than it is for us to
hear about it. Yeah.
Oh, well, the thing that I am happy to be able to observe in my time is that the divided society that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. So we had the Good Friday Agreement in 96, and that brought the peace. The IRA had this ceasefire, and then we set up our own parliament here in Belfast, along with all the other devolved. So Scotland and Wales did the same, and Northern Ireland and the north of Ireland did the same. And we were able to mostly make our own decisions and rule ourselves. But there's still a very significant pro-British portion of our population. But the issue that they have is that they've lost the argument. You know, people are just no, we want to reunify. Yeah, and so we're pushing for a border poll in the north of Ireland at the minute to try and get a referendum on that. And it looks like, you know, the pro-union side are going to get beat with that, especially on an all-island basis. So if the referendum is going to be held on an all-island basis.
Oh, wow.
But also in the north is going to have their own one. The idea being that us in the north will get to make a vote in that referendum. If we get a 50+1% of the vote, then it will go to the all-island basis, and then the all-island it will pass. It as all polls since forever have, and there's no indication that any result would be any different. All polls have indicated strongly that they want to reunify. the problem with the pro-British side was also a part of that thing, a Brexit thing, it took the UK out of the European Union.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That really fucked off a lot of people, because also in the north of Ireland here, we voted in that, being a part of the United Kingdom, and we voted against that.
Right.
But we got taken out of it against our will, because the English decided and Scotland was the same, and the English decided that they wanted out of the European Union.
Right.
So what the English wanted, the English got.
Yeah.
But what we wanted, we never got. But us pro-Irish, it's Irish people that want to reunify, we've been saying, that's a part of our argument for years is, listen, we can't keep we are second-class citizens within the United Kingdom, and we need to be able to rule ourselves. And that's not to say that there isn't corruption in Dublin, in the Dublin government, and there isn't bad politics. There is, of course there is. But we can't do anything about that.
Right.
In England, in Westminster. There's nothing I can do that will affect Boris Johnson's decision-making.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if my local politician who is travelling up and down to Dublin, and I know who he is, and I can go and contact him direct. And we do have that version here. We have politicians here that do, they're MPs and they go to Westminster. But it's fucking pointless. It's literally, they don't do anything. They don't, they're ignored, and we can see them being ignored. And we've got eyes, we've got ears, we know what's happening.
Right.
And the Brexit referendum brought that home for a lot of people. A lot of people realised, and young people especially, they sort of went, oh, fuck that. I don't want to be out of the European Union. I love Europe. Mm-hmm. I love being able to travel around Europe as a European citizen. Mm-hmm. And that was being taken from them, So I think it's going to change. So that's what I mean to say is I'm glad that I'm able to see that in my lifetime,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I may see a reunified Ireland.
Wow.
I wondered, I really did with the whole Brexit thing, and I wondered, what's going on with Ireland?
Yeah.
In all of this.
Well, we got royally fucked. We really did. I mean, even I remember back, the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, was the one that announced that he was going to have this Brexit referendum. Mm-hmm. That was the Tory party, is a right-wing conservative party in England, in the United Kingdom.
Right.
That was a response to a potential civil war within his own party. So there's a really, really right-wing group called the ERG, the European Research Group. Huh? They're Tories, and they really push everything within the Tory party rightwards, whereas Cameron himself would have been a more centrist right-winger, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So in a response to sort of appease those guys, he decided to allow for this much clamoured for Brexit referendum. Against the advice of everybody who had a brain. They said, this isn't a good idea. But to make it even worse, they didn't prepare for it at all. The campaign they ran was very, very poor, whereas the pro-leave campaign was very energetic, invigorated, and well-funded. Mm-hmm. And then, even back then, the Irish Prime Minister at the time was a guy called Enda Kenny, and he was advising David Cameron about the issue with the border in Ireland, because it's I don't know if I'm explaining this to you and you already know it, but maybe some of your listeners don't understand.
Yeah.
The border in Ireland, between the north and the south is in the EU. If UK leaves the EU, that creates another border within the EU, across which goods and people can pass. Mm-hmm. So the pro-Brexit people wanted to put an actual hard border, as in a border with customs control and all this, with customs officers and checking your bags and all this. Now, you'd say, well, that's what happens at borders. The last time that happened at a border in Ireland,
it was not so good.
It started a fucking war.
Right.
So this is what Enda Kenny way back then was warning about. Okay, if you're going to have your referendum, you need to have in place what's going to happen in Ireland if the UK decides to leave.
Right.
Because it will create a problem. And even after they left, it was unbelievable. Even after they left, it wasn't until a year, whenever they left, then they had 2 years to get everything ready, and then they were out. It was until they had a year left that they started to deal with the Irish border. And it was never mentioned in the media. It was never mentioned in the press. No one was talking about it.
Huh.
In England, in the UK. But in Ireland, we were screaming about it, but no one was fucking listening. Now it's become a huge problem.
Yeah, we faced something similar. I mean, under fucking Donald Trump, with the the wall in Mexico. It's like,
shit.
As Americans, we kind of know that those walls aren't a good look.
No.
For anything. They never tend to fare well in any situation. I was just agog at how many people were in support of that.
Yeah.
They were like, maybe I learned nothing from history here.
I don't know what it is, but it seems like it's a far right trait to really come up with like these really big wedge issues and get people really all puffed up and inflamed and just angry about bullshit issues.
Yeah.
And then, they'll write on that, and then they pass these huge votes, and then, well, what do we actually do?
Yeah,
right? It's all about, we haven't got a plan. Our plan was to get the vote. We never made any plan for what to do after we got the vote.
Right.
Yeah, but all the while, again, back to my point, the division, the nature of divide and conquer, all the while you're getting your pocket picked.
Right.
Sure.
That's, so while this big wall thing's happening over here, say, for example, as an issue, they're passing legislation that is removing money from the working class, removing rights from the working class, the normal working man and woman in the street. There are in the UK, there's been so many things happen with Boris Johnson's and his horrible government, but all the while they're passing legislation that is undermining your healthcare, undermining your rights, your working rights, all these things that were fought for by your fathers and your grandfathers over decades.
Yep, sounds familiar.
Exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while they're passing these things, but everyone's arguing about the fucking wall or the war or the other thing that's happening.
Yeah. Yep. Big red herring.
Yeah.
But pun intended, I guess, backpedaling, you're riding your bike. You're riding your bike in Belfast, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
How'd you come across rock and roll? What was your big kick?
Well, I was saying to Matt earlier on, just before you started recording, that I grew up watching American TV. And I would watch the Beverly Hillbillies and the Addams Family and Flash Gordon serials, and watch these things on every Saturday morning. Watch these programs, and just later on Starsky and Hutch in the evening. And I grew up watching all these things. And one of the big things was the Elvis Presley movies, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so watching those as a kid, and it just sort of became ingrained in my psyche that the rock guy with the guitar. The iconography of that stayed with me, I think.
Yeah.
And at home we were listening, my mum and dad would listen to a lot of country music, Charlie Pride and all that sort of stuff. And then there was a bit of soul as well, so Otis Redding and Ray Charles and things like that. But I asked to learn to play the guitar, so I got sent to guitar lessons. A local school teacher lady around here, Fra McCann, her name was. So I started going to lessons, and I just loved it. I wasn't very good at it, but I loved it deeply.
Sure.
And I loved, as a kid, maybe pretending. And I remember, the pretending to be a guitar god or a guitar player. And I must have been trying to copy Elvis. I must have been. And I remember when I was a kid, my dad coming into the room in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, and taking the guitar from me. He said, "Son, you have to go to sleep." but
right.
I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would lift my guitar, and I'm like 9 years of age, and I remember lying in my bed writing songs about driving a big truck in America and things like that. About being a trucker in America. I didn't know anything. I'm a big truck driving man or something like that.
Right.
And so it was just that,
Yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm 50 and I still pretend to be a rock star.
Right. Yep. Do the same thing in my living room. Yep. Still do it.
Yeah.
When did you start your first band then?
I started my first band when I was in my, I was a bit of a late starter, maybe 22, 23, but I was in a band at school.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a band at in high school.
Oh, okay.
It was the local sort of, this, that band, the Smiths.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the local sort of little clouds of doom that would wander the school hallways trying to, emulate Morrissey and obsessed by Morrissey. But I wasn't that. I was very much not that.
Right.
And the guy, Terry, I remember him coming, he says, will you come and play bass in our band? And I didn't know how to play bass. I didn't even really know what a bass was. And I must have been 14, something like that, 13, maybe 13, 14. I said, yeah, I'll do that. And he said, what songs are you playing? Oh, we're basically just sort of a Smiths. We're just going to do Smiths songs. And I didn't like the Smiths. And I went, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do it anyway. And I ended up loving the Smiths. I grew to love the Smiths.
Yeah.
I became an ardent fan very quickly. So we did that. We never played any gigs. We just rehearsed, and we would invite girls to come and watch us. And
of course.
Right.
Yeah. But it wasn't until maybe 22, 23, something like that. It was sort of post-grunge. And I started a band called Coda.
Yeah.
And we did, it was all original music. I wrote everything. It was my first foray into that, being in a band and writing all this stuff. And it was good. It was a good formative experience,
Yeah. Do you think the blues was always there, or was that just something you grew to appreciate more and more, you think?
Well, I'll tell you what happened with the blues. Again, I love TV and cinema. And I watched a film called, I'm sure you remember it, called Crossroads.
Oh, yeah.
With
Ralph
Macchio. Yeah.
Steve Vai was the bad guy.
Yeah. With that amazing finale, it still stays with me. I watched it not so long ago, and it holds up. It's a good film still.
Yeah.
I haven't watched that in how long? Gosh,
a long time.
Maybe I should.
Yeah. I was prepared to be sort of, oh Jesus, this is fucking terrible, but it's not. It's not bad. But I remember watching it, and the thing that stayed with me was the story about Robert Johnson. And I was still a good Catholic boy, going to mass and observing holy days and doing all these things, as everybody did around here at the time. So the story of him selling his soul to the devil kind of haunted me. And I became sort of a little bit obsessed with that story.
Yeah.
But I'd never heard his music other than any covers that were in the movie.
Wow.
I probably didn't even realize that it was him. I'll be honest, I'm not even 100% certain that I realized that it was a real person.
Yeah.
Robert Johnson.
Yeah. Because there wasn't, around here where I live, no one's playing blues. It wasn't, certainly not to a 14-year-old boy who's still going to school.
Yeah.
But I left here when I was 16. I went to go to work in England, and I went into a local library, and I started going through books and music history books, and there was a book called Blues and Soul, and I took it out and I started to flip. And by then I was listening to a lot of soul and jazz, and I was listening to a lot of Dixieland jazz and soul music, and I'd heard some blues music. And I got to there was a page on Robert Johnson and a picture of him, and it blew my fucking mind. I couldn't believe it. I read the story. The story was the same story that was in the film.
Yeah.
I was still going to mass every Sunday, and the idea that something, it literally haunted me, that you could sell your immortal soul. And then a question crossed my mind, and it was, would I do the same?
Would I do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've thought the same thing. It's like, yeah. Well, the mythology is so interesting about it. It's just we don't really know a lot. I mean, there's only really like a handful of photos of the guy in the first place. Don't know a lot about his story. He did just kind of disappear for about a year.
Right. He was like a mediocre player, then he disappeared and then came back like a genius.
Yeah. It was like Jesus going out into the wilderness, just going, and there's you can draw these parallels. So I'm a practicing Catholic, and so these things are obvious to me, and I came up. So I got a cassette tape out of the same library of him, and there was a box set by Eric Clapton as well, called Crossroads. I don't know if you remember. It was so like a 4-album thing, and I got it.
Going to the crossroads.
Yeah, that would have been the only blues music I had heard. Yep. I would say I'd maybe heard a little bit of maybe something like Howlin' Wolf or Muddy Waters, or like the theme. They used one of their like Boom Boom, John Lee Hooker on a Levi's advert or something like that. That would have been what I'd heard. Whatever it was out there in popular culture, I would have heard Cream. I would have heard a little bit of Clapton and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I did love it. I did like it, but I didn't know what it was, you know?
Yeah.
I took the Robert Johnson cassette and I listened to it, and I just became obsessed with the man. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't even sure that I liked it, because the sound was so foreign to my ears. They've been remastered and cleaned up now, so they're much cleaner. But back then, they would have been really, really wobbly, and they would have sounded like they were recorded sometime in the 20s, you know, or the 30s. And but you could hear enough to go, "What is this?"
Yeah.
I just became obsessed, and so. But it was the legend of him that started my, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking into the legend of. I'm just listening to your cover of "Poor Boy."
Yeah.
And it's like, that's still fascinating to me when you look at just the roots and the history of that song. It's like, written by who? Nobody knows. It goes back to pre-World War I, as far as they know.
Yeah.
And just kind of like folk and roots music that they have no, I mean, you can attribute early recordings of it, for sure. Hal Wolf and others, but just, it's amazing to me that it's still within the last couple of centuries and nobody has a writer.
It is amazing, but you find that with lots of native cultures. We actually have that in Ireland as well, because the Celts, it was an oral tradition, all oral. Nothing was written down, but you see that all across the world. Native American culture, Australian Aboriginal culture, First Nations culture. Nothing gets written down. The problem then happens when the imperialist comes along and starts fucking you up.
Right.
You've got no record of your culture, so you're divided from your culture. If you're divided from your culture, how do you fight back? What are you fighting for?
Yeah.
You know?
Right, you don't even know.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Did you find like any, I don't know if resistance is the right word, but when you decide you're going to make blues music or blues-based music, how was that accepted where you're at?
Oh, it's fine. It's great. By the time I got to, do the Bonnevilles, I mean, no, I don't mean to say that there wasn't blues music here. There was. It's just I wasn't hearing it. I hadn't heard it. Rory Gallagher obviously is Irish, and he was a huge star and well admired and loved. And there was lots of blues bands, blues cover bands playing and all that sort of. But it wasn't not where I was. Not to me.
You bring in some punk sensibilities. Yeah,
that's deliberate. I love that, and it makes me feel less of a fraud.
I think that's a lot of people actually do that, and it's interesting to see just kind of the places that punk kind of has managed to squeeze itself into. We're good friends with an artist here. His name's William Elliott Whitmore, and he's a folk artist, but he definitely has a punk rock background too.
Yeah,
and you can really feel it and hear it in a lot of his songs.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic, though. Whenever you get, one of the big, I would say influences when it comes to that punk crossover. Maybe that's the wrong word, but here in Ireland would be the Pogues.
Yeah.
The what they did with Irish music by bringing in that London punk element and that attitude. It was a very much, fuck it, this is what we're doing. And my God, what they did with it was it was revolutionary.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just listening to that Pogues record a couple of days ago.
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, it was St. Patrick's Day, so we always...
It was St. Patrick's Day, so it felt like a good day. Throw on the Pogues.
Brilliant.
The day where everybody in America is Irish for a day. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's allowed. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But we find a lot of that. A lot of people we've talked to people who are former, death metal players. They played industrial music, everything else, and have gravitated more towards folk and roots and blues as they mature.
Yeah, I think that's common enough. I think that's worldwide. Here, there's a lot of ex-punks get into, rockabilly and country music and folk music and things like that. I think that's I don't know why, but it's a thing.
I think it lends itself more to storytelling than a lot of other mediums, maybe.
Aye, yeah.
Yeah. And the name, Bonnevilles, I mean, I heard the story. I don't mean to, belabor that, where you came up with it, but from the Bonneville Salt Flats, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you were into like the land speed record and racing and things like that when you were younger?
I loved that when I was a kid. I remember reading books about, there was a guy in England called Donald Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very famous, he died trying to go for the water record in a boat in England. It flipped on him, and there's footage of it. It's quite spectacular. But he was a big hero. He was one of these. I think he was like a World War II pilot or something. And of course, then they ended up in America. They all went on to become hot rodders, and I think in England they all went to do the land speed record, but and things like that. But he was very admired. So he was sort of an English hero, and we got a lot of English television and stuff. So I knew all about him. Car called Bluebird, big, and big aerodynamic thing. Mm-hmm. And so he held the land speed record for a long time. But then the American guys started to do it, or they were probably doing it at the time, but they were winning it then. And the cars got so fast. Then there's a place in Wales called Pendine Beach. And that's where they used to do it. But the cars got so fast in the record because, back then 300 mile an hour was the record, Right. Over the course of, I don't know, a decade, it's up to 500 or 600 miles an hour. So
holy shit.
Yeah. So the beach isn't long enough. It goes to the natural place. The place that they find is the Bonnevilles Salt Flats. Yeah, and then all the American guys were winning it and taking it. It was a golden era in the 60s of it. Mm-hmm. And I still kind of get a little bit nostalgic when I think about it. But yeah, so that's where the name comes from.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go out there. It just looks like such a surreal place too. Almost a moonscape.
Yeah, it would be
a great shot for a video for you guys.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Back over here. Yeah. I was just reading a little bit about Burt Munro again. Just thinking about watching that.
That's a great little film.
That World's Fastest Indian.
World's Fastest Indian. That's it.
That was a great one. Yeah. He still holds the record.
That's right.
From 1967.
Really?
Yeah. That's when the record was.
Wow.
And the bike was like a 20s. Remodded Indian, bored out.
Jesus.
Yeah. And still nobody's topped him.
That's crazy.
For that particular class, the motorcycles, like 100,000 cc.
Yeah. He was obviously well ahead of his time, and he knew what he was doing if that record has stood that long.
Yeah. I think one of his relatives or sons or nephews or something, there's Lee Monroe maybe, made a new Indian bike in about 2017, I want to say. It's a killer looking bike.
Oh, is he trying to do it as well?
Yeah, he's trying to do it and try to break it, but he still hasn't been able to break it.
Fucking hell.
With a new Indian. So, but yeah, they dumped a whole bunch of, it was like the Spirit of Monroe or something is the name of the bike. You should check it out. It's a beautiful looking machine.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's brilliant. That's right up my street. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So when did you meet Chris?
Must have met Chris around 2008, maybe. He was playing in a little garage rock band in the neighbouring town here called the Childish Thoughts. And they were really good. They were really fun. It was a fun band. But they asked me would I come and play bass for them. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd just been in another band with another guy, and it was very stressful. He wasn't a particularly pleasant person. Sorry, we didn't get on very well. Let me say that. And we had we had a bit of a fallout. We tried to make it work, and we went and toured a bit and did things, and we weren't able to make it work for various reasons. But when they asked me to play the Childish Thoughts, I just thought this is exactly what I need, because those guys would turn up in rehearsal, and it would be like a smoke machine and lights, and they would just smoke dope and drink beer and just jam for fucking hours on the one riff. And I went, and we'd go to gigs and we would get fucking pissed.
What?
And just be as wild as garage punk as we wanted to be. And there was There was no pressure to be good, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed, and I did that. I did that for 6 months. But Chris was drumming in the band.
Mm-hmm.
So I then decided that I wanted to carry, because I'd written a bunch of good songs for this other two-piece, and I thought, I don't want to let this go.
Yeah.
I want to do something with these songs. So I decided that I would try and find another drummer. So I knew a couple of guys, and I asked them, and we went and played a few shows, and we kind of fumbled through them. It was okay.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't very good, and they weren't really up to the job. But Chris was playing in the Thoughts, but he was also playing in a, you know what drummers are like. If they're playing, a drummer plays in about 50 fucking bands, right?
Right.
So I was kind of going, I don't want to ask Chris because he's so busy.
Right.
But one of the things that I'd done with the band, so I sort of laid out my manifesto, if you like, for what I'm doing with this band. And one of the things that I said was, we're never playing for free and everybody's getting paid.
Mm.
So right from our first gig, we got paid.
Nice.
And we managed to maintain that all the way through. So, and I would advise any other band, if they can, if that's possible, to try and do that, because it sort of puts you in a different space. So I said to Chris, listen, would you come and fill in for me? This other guy isn't fucking working out, and there's 3 or 4 shows here, and you'll get paid. You know, you get £100, well, no, about $120, $130, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he was delighted. He was like, yeah, fuck, that's great. Let's do that. So we learnt the song. He learnt the songs real quick, and that was it. We never left. And then it was years later, we were being interviewed on the radio, on the BBC, and someone asked that question. And Chris, he says, do you know you have never officially asked me to join the band? I said...
So it's still a trial?
No, I said, okay, live on the radio, live on the BBC. Do you want to be in the Bonnevilles? We'd done 2 albums at the time. You know, and yeah, Chris is an amazing person. He's one of my favorite people in the world.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And, yeah, I'm very, very lucky. And the type of person that he is, he's exactly the person that balances me, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I am a certain way. I have certain, you know, as we all do, certain traits and affectations and character flaws and character, you know, you know, and Chris is the guy that balances that out. So the things that we run the band as a business, so it, you know, it's literally everything's split 50-50, but Chris is the guy that's able to make that happen, because I'm not very good at that stuff, but Chris is, you know, and so our personalities work together, and our own personal sort of traits balance each other out. You know,
your musical traits balance each other pretty well too. I'd imagine, like in a 2-band group, that you'd have to have a really good balance.
Yeah,
for it to work.
Well, yeah. I mean, Chris comes from a heavy metal background, so that was his first thing. He still is, you know. He plays in it. He plays in a heavy metal band called Cursed Sun in Belfast.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And they're fantastic. They have a couple of records out. So he loves metal. I mean, that's his first love. But with him, he'll tell you himself. You know, when he got into when he was asked to go into the Childish Thoughts, and then he joined the Bonnevilles, we became the Bonnevilles. All the records that we were listening to, it opened his musical education up. He'll say that himself. You know, so Chris is a raconteur when it comes to music. Now he listens to absolutely everything. He devours music. You know, he can talk about blues and garage punk and metal as well as anyone, you know, and anything else.
Right on.
Was it always intended to be a 2-man group?
Yeah, like I said, I was in that other the band before the Childish Thoughts. It was a 2-piece, and it was drums and guitar. I wasn't really convinced that I was able to pull it off, but the other guy, to give him his credit, he you know, he's a big guy called Tommy Malloy, amazing drummer, absolutely one of the best drummers I've ever seen. But he was convinced that we could pull it off and that I could pull it off. You know, there's a lot of, if you're in a 2-piece, there's a lot of pressure on both people. There's nowhere to hide.
Right.
So I wasn't absolutely sure I was able to do it. And it wasn't until I wrote a song called Army of One, which was on our first record. the Bonnevilles' first record. It wasn't until I wrote that. That was the first sort of song I wrote for the two-piece. I went, this is okay, this might work. And it was that, but Tommy was the guy that he was pushing us to do the two-piece thing. I even brought another friend of mine in, Declan Feenan, to come in and play bass with us when we were rehearsing. I was on with Tommy, I don't want to do the two-piece. I'm not sure. Let's try the bass thing. And we tried it, and Declan didn't really, I don't think he really wanted to do it. And Tommy definitely didn't want him to do it.
Yeah.
So we pushed on as a two-piece, and we played some gigs, and we did a couple of little short tours over in Europe and stuff, but our personalities, we weren't able to make it work, So then, as I said, by the time we split up, I wanted to do the two-piece. So then going into the thoughts, fucking around for 6 months, going, okay, listen, I'm not ready to stop this two-piece, because I felt like I was I just convinced myself that I was able to do it when I walked away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that element of it. But then the two-piece thing as well, the other aspect of it is, it's a more practical and rather boring thing. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's easy to just, especially when you start out, you just throw your shit in the back of a car and away you fucking go, and that's it.
Right.
You don't have to hire vans or buy vans or tour buses. Well, not that I've ever had a tour bus, but big. We do hire big vans now, but we can do that. We can afford to do that now. But when you're starting out, so it allows you that space to get out there. And at the end of the day, if we're going out and we're playing a show for 200 quid or 200 euros, you're walking away with a day's pay after. You're getting 100 quid each.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what a guy working on a building site makes.
Right.
You're getting, you maybe spend £10 on fuel.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to splitting that with like 9 cats in a funk supergroup or something.
Fucking right. They're still only getting 200 quid.
Right.
So then you start to go, well, this is okay. This is good. And me and Chris are getting on, and we're getting gigs, and people are interested in what we're doing, and we've got a label involved now, and they're looking at us, and so it's not that we don't want to play with other musicians, because we very, very much do. And when we get a chance to, we take it. We did a tour with James Legge, and he played on a couple of songs in our set on keys, electric piano and organ, and fucking hell, it just, if another member was to come in, it would be that. It would be electric piano and keyboards. There's what James did on that tour for us. There's a bit of footage online. He played on a song called Kneel at the Altar. And it was just every night he came on and did it with us. Oh, it's her standing up on the back of your neck, hearing that sound. So we would like to play with other guys, but just from a practical, financial sort of position.
Just logistical,
yeah. We're playing at a festival down in Kilkenny in the south of Ireland next month or the month after, I can't remember. And we used to have a van and all this stuff, but over COVID, sitting in a fucking driveway for 2 years, it's fucked.
Yeah.
So it's away now. So when we did that recent UK tour, we went and rented a van. It's fine. It's great. But we would have had our own van beforehand, and it's gone now. So going down to this festival is, we have a big sort of car, big massive car, and so we just throw everything into it and go down rather than going renting a van. If there was another person, we couldn't do it.
Yeah. I really appreciated that you just went on your tour, and I really appreciated how you handled it, or how you were talking to your fans. And just letting them know, hey, I'd love to hug you, but not this time. Right. That sort of attitude, just wanting to play it safe and be respectful of the whole pandemic, which has really affected all of us.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I did that video was that, as I said in the video, it's not because of you tonight. It's for the guy tomorrow night.
Exactly.
Who hasn't left the house in 2 years, hasn't been to a show in 2 fucking years.
Yeah.
And if I hug you tonight and get COVID, I can't play this show tomorrow night, and this guy's going home disappointed. He's not going out.
Right.
And I wanted to do everything that we could do to make sure that didn't happen to us and happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not particularly worried about getting this. I don't want to talk about COVID. It's a fucking awful thing.
Oh, it is.
You know, I'm not particularly worried about getting it. I'm a healthy guy. You know, by all accounts, this strain isn't very.
Right.
It's not like it was at the beginning.
Right.
From what I understand, I'm not a doctor. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly worried for myself, but I know how much it meant to our fans to come out and see us. You know, whenever people see us, we played a gig there in Leamington Spa, and in England on the tour, and one of the guys, he was talking to us afterwards and at the merch, and he said, "This was spiritual," you know.
Mm.
And although I would like to say it's because we are so fucking good, we bring the spirit of the universe up in everyone, the reality is these guys haven't seen a fucking show in 2 years.
Right.
And it was pent up.
Yeah.
And I mean, now, don't get me wrong. It meant that the tour was like shooting fish in a fucking barrel. It really was. But,
Right.
you know, but that was the thing, you know. So for someone to say that to you,
Right.
you must understand and you must go, well, okay, this guy needed this.
Yeah.
You could see it in his face. He was, I fucking, you know, I needed this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all I have to do is take the few basic precautions, and I get to come and play that show for that guy. We get to play that show for that guy. And that guy gets to release 2 years of fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
And maybe think, okay, the world is maybe going back to normal, or maybe we've got a version of life that we can just live with.
I'm sure you needed it too.
Oh, yeah. It's funny you should say that. Over the course of the 2 years, I had to go and get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Delivery. I do doing delivery driving now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only part-time. It's like everybody else. Well, obviously being a musician, I wasn't working from home. There was no work to do. We did a few live streams and things like that.
Yeah.
And they were fine. But basically I got sort of financially stretched and put in a position where I had to just, okay, I need to get a job here. No big deal. I don't mean to say boo-hoo per me.
Yeah.
I actually like it. I actually like it very much. It's a lot of fun. So I got this job, and at the start of the tour, me and Chris were sort of talking to each other, and I said, well, listen, I don't mean to sound melodramatic, but it was just before we set off from Belfast, but this might be our last tour.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know. We don't know what's going to happen with this COVID shit, whether it's coming back, it's away forever, we don't know.
Right.
And I literally can't afford to not do this job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would have walked away from anything to do a tour. Anything.
Mm.
You know, any job. I know, I'm going on tour, see you later. If you want me when I come back,
yeah,
that's great. If you don't, I understand it, so it's fine. But I was in a position where I couldn't make that decision.
Yeah.
So Chris said, he actually said, he says, I was afraid you were going to say that. I said, you understand why? He says, of course I understand why. I mean, it's not that we wouldn't have played shows or recorded albums or done short weekenders or things like that. We would have continued. But as we had been, I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, because it means walking away from this job.
Yeah.
So we go on the tour, and I think by the third night, I was on the phone to my wife, and I went, there's no fucking way I'm not doing this for the rest of my life.
Good.
Real. Yeah.
I'm relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we came off the tour. I said to Chris, I said, listen, this might be our last one, so make sure you have fun. Enjoy. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to just soak every second of it up, and let's go. And we did, and obviously, so there was a change of heart.
That's good to hear that perseverance, because you guys certainly weren't getting a lot of support from a lot of government officials either. From everything we heard of people saying, well, people just might not be able to do what they used to do, and
right.
Go get a new job. And it's like,
motherfuckers.
Oh, Jesus.
It's horrible.
And how important it is, just how important the arts are to people.
Yeah.
And how it's shit on by so many if it's not a straight job.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. And it is one of the things that is very frustrating, I find, is that most musicians, especially maybe once you start, you have an idea about being a rock star. Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to be Tommy Lee in a mansion. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that lasts very long. Mm-hmm. I think that a normal psyche would say, okay, I can see that this is more of a job. It's graft. It's hard.
Right.
It's really, really rewarding, but I don't know if I want to do it because it is hard and I'm not getting what I thought. Or I love this so much, I would nearly do it for free.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's the point where you're open to being taken advantage of by whatever record labels, society, governments, culture ministers, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Club owners, at that point. So that, because I'd been in enough bands before when I started the band, as I said in the manifesto, such as I didn't actually write a manifesto, it was just what I had in my head. Mm-hmm. We're getting paid from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you could be getting taken advantage of, and that tends to be what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad truth is, most artists across the board, don't want a lot. They want enough to do what they do.
I agree.
And the payoff for that is that you get to have culture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now that's a fucking huge thing. You get to have culture.
Yeah.
If society can figure out a way, I'm not talking about giving you money for doing nothing. Let the guy work.
Right.
Pay him enough to get so that he can pay his bills and do the same normal things. He doesn't need as much as you. Doesn't want as much as you. I'm reminded of a quote from. I'm not one given to quoting Winston Churchill because he doesn't have a great reputation here in Ireland. He did a lot of horrible things before World War II.
He's got World War II, and that's really the only thing.
He's got World War. He was the right man. He was the right man at the time. But
yeah,
he says his ministers came to him when the Blitz of London was happening, and they were saying, "Listen, we need to." Secure our finances. We need to stop spending on this, that, and the other thing. And one of the things was the arts. And he said, "Well, what are we fighting for then?"
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, it's such a myopic view to think that a musician playing music is the only part of that job. I think I read a post of yours or a news post, something about how you have to wear so many different hats. Be an engineer, carpenter, luthier.
Yeah.
Lighting technician, driver, all of these things for yourself.
Yeah, it is a very, very multi-skilled job.
Absolutely.
Playing your instrument and writing your songs is a part of what you do, literally, and especially now in the days of social media, you've got to be a fucking marketing guy too.
Yeah,
that's at the same time a pain in the fucking ass.
Yeah.
But it's also a thing that you think back to the 90s, you didn't have access to that. You couldn't promote yourself. There was no version of this. So at the same time, it's a pain in the ass. It's also a great gift.
Sure.
So you have all these different hats to wear, as you say, and most people do it happily, and they'll happily do it. And it makes for a very interesting existence. But you still have to be able to pay your fucking bills.
Right.
Absolutely. Do you find, as being a Northern Irish band, that there's an extra challenge in getting people's attention? Kind of like what we were just talking about before. I didn't know you guys existed until very recently. And John and I even had a conversation these guys have been around for how many years?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Because you're amazing. Seriously, I've yet to find a song that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Agree 100%. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I appreciate it. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, we do have issues with visibility. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
There's no budget there for marketing or anything like that. It's just ourselves. We just do what we can. When we go on tours, we throw some money at it, but that's becoming, you throw it at Facebook, turn to ads and things like that, but it's becoming less and less effective as time goes on. We're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Just because it's not effective, not because we're for that, only for that reason. It started when those platforms started. You put up a post and everyone saw it. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And and now it's become less and less. It became less and less and less. They filtered it out, and then they tempted you to take out an advert.
Right.
And at the start, the adverts were very effective and they really worked. And you could literally see, you could put 2 gigs on, and you could put 1 gig with no marketing on Facebook and another gig with marketing on Facebook, and you could literally watch the ticket sales go up on one and stay static on the other. So, you could prove to yourself that this worked, but over time that's become less and less. because for whatever reasons, Facebook has decided they don't show people your fucking posts, and it's infuriating.
Right.
Yeah, so the visibility is a problem. But early on, we decided that the thing that we're going to do, because of, again, the strategy or in the manifesto, was we're going to gig. We're going to gig as much as possible, and we're going to gig more than everybody else.
Yeah.
And we did, and we do. We just gig. We gig, well, obviously not at the minute, although it's all starting to open up now. So we're starting to see our diary getting filled up a little.
Mm-hmm.
But that was our strategy, because we knew if we were going to be on a label, it was going to be a small indie, or medium indie or whatever. There's not really going to be a marketing budget there. We're certainly not going to take out loans and things like that. So the best thing we can do is just play shows and get the fans to spread the word, and they do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely working on spreading the word on this side of the planet.
Well, thank you.
We shall do our best.
You have any plans of ever touring this way?
Yeah.
We would love to. We're talking about it maybe next year, but we need to get a lot of shit sorted out. My personal situation needs to sort of do a bit of a U-turn. So I need to be able to get away from the job, which I'm actually going in next week to tell them that I can. You know, I'm in part-time at the minute, but I'm only going to be able to do part-time because the diary is filling up so much. As I said, I do like it. I don't mind it. It gets me out there, and it gives me time to think, and you know, and things like that. And I don't mind it, but it's not being a musician. It's not gigging.
Yeah.
and writing.
Right.
And it's not the same.
No, it's not the same. So I'm working on that. So yeah, I would like to. I really would like to, because again, it's a part of that. And I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. In my imagination, in my child, the child that lives in me,
Mm-hmm.
that lives in us all. Going to play gigs in America that's the thing. That's what you want to do.
Mm.
You know, we've played in Mississippi.
Yeah.
At a festival in 2015, I think it was.
Oh yeah.
And it was the high point, the treat of my life.
Yeah.
Being obsessed with blues and all those fantastic stories and that amazing music, and being able to go out to the crucible of where it all started.
Yeah.
You know, I was like a child. I literally was like a child. I would walk down a street in Clarksdale and see the name of a street and remember, Jesus, that's from that song. And it just fucking, it freaked me out. I loved it.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you get a chance to spend much time in Memphis?
No, we didn't. It was Clarksdale and Tupelo.
Yeah.
We just sort of flew in and out of Memphis, really.
Still all cool places.
Yeah.
We grew up in southern Missouri. Matt and I did. So Memphis was about 3 hours away or so.
Was that all?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Used to get down there quite a bit.
Yeah, I've been in a long time now. Yeah, it's a lot farther from Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just went through last year. It's fun to drive here. We went to Florida on a little mini vacation.
Yeah.
See the family, and it's cool to drive here from like Columbia, Missouri. You go through St. Louis, you go through the Delta, you go through Georgia, or the edge of Alabama, and you're basically hitting that highway.
Wow.
Of the history of the blues,
Yeah.
Transparency. That's what I tried to tell my kid in the way in the car. Anyway, she was nonplussed. Couldn't give a shit, but like seeing the cotton fields, and all that stuff on the trip down, and then into the swamps and bayous.
Yeah,
it's cool. It gives me chills every time I get down that way.
That's great. Yeah,
love that area.
I was definitely. We signed our contract with Alive for our third album.
Mm-hmm.
In Clarksdale. So we'd been talking with Patrick from Alive Record. He said, you want to put a record out? Yeah, we'd love to. It was what we wanted.
Mm.
So we said, yeah, it'd be great. He said, have you signed the contract yet? So you need to get that across to me, because everything was happening.
Mm.
We'd sent the album off to him, and it's going to the pressing plant, but we hadn't signed the contract. And I said, no, we're going to sign it. We just want to do it in Clarksdale. We want to,
Yeah.
I want to go to Robert Johnson's Crossroads,
right?
And sign it there. Patrick's a French guy, so he was unimpressed, and he said, "That's fine."
Uh-huh.
So we land in Memphis. we drive to Holly Springs where they had the benefactors ball, what they call, the night before the festival proper. And we played in Junior Kimber's Juke Joint. We only arrived at midnight, and we played. And it was such a cool fucking thing. We walked in, and somebody shouts, "Hey, there's the fucking Bonnevilles."
Oh, wow!
It's how does anybody know us? You know, it was such a treat. We're like, oh, okay. It was just awesome. So the next day, we're using the sat nav, and we drive down to Clarksdale, and we're going out to the hotel where the festival is, and I'm telling my wife, and Chris's wife, Shelley, and I'm telling them, like, no, Robert Johnson's Crossroads is in Clarksdale, where he signed Soul to the Devil, apparently, and we're going to sign, and we're pulled up at this junction, and she goes, Is that it? It's just like a fucking. I thought it was going to be some. I thought I was going to see fireworks, and there was going to be people there, and it was going to be a small little thing out there.
Yeah,
and it was just this. No, this is it. This is the fucking. It's just a big cross, literally a crossroads, but it's like you know.
A truck stop and a petrol station.
I was like, holy shit, this is it. So we did. We got out and we went and did it over there, and it was a treat. I can't say it was a spiritual moment. It was it was a little bit more industrial than I was expecting, but it was a treat nonetheless.
Right. You were like, where's the field and the old tree and the
Where's the old man sitting on a bench? Yeah. You know,
right? These roads are paved. What?
I thought I was going to have to go into like the Blues Museum and say, right, where's Robert Johnson's Crossroads? You know, he's going to give me a map, and I'm going to have to, you know.
Oh, I do have to ask you. I was asked by a friend who also plays guitar, and be remiss if I didn't. Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Kyle.
Kyle, Kelly. Speaking of people that turn people on to other people.
Yeah, they turned us on to you. Yep.
Yeah.
Well done, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, Kyle's a great guitar player, but he's a go. You got to ask him how he got that tone for, No Law and Lurgan.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've got to fill in. I mean, with having the two-piece, you've got to fill in the bass, you've got to fill in the low.
Yeah.
But he's really curious as to your gear setup for that.
Well, the amp, I use two amps.
Mm-hmm.
So I use like a PV Classic 50-watt combo, 2x12.
Mm-hmm.
Real sort of a workhorse of an amp.
Mm-hmm.
It's got its speakers swapped out. It's got Celestian greenbacks in there.
Okay.
And then I can use it to sort of go to the high end of things, the high end of the tone. But the other amp I use, which is the real deal, it's a thing called a Kelly.
Okay.
And it's like 1967, I'm going to say. And it's based on a Selmer treble and bass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, those heads from the 60s that were built in London.
Uh-huh.
So this guy, it was a guy called John Kelly. He's living in London, and he's working at the Selmer plant, and he decides to sort of set up his own thing.
Okay.
And he built these Kelly amps, and they were absolutely gorgeous.
Mm.
Very high-end and boutique. You would call them now boutique, but that's what they were at the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't. He was just sort of building them out of his shed in the garden, and I don't know. Nobody knows how many he built, but he's got a little sort of obsessive fan group of a few people in the world that know about these amps.
Mm.
So basically, I used to have a guitar store in town. Selling musical instruments. Again, as I've mentioned earlier on, I'm a terrible businessman, so I quickly fucking ended up thousands of pounds in debt, and I would give things away, and I was just awful. There was one of these back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, I suppose. You used to have in Ireland, you would have a scene called the show bands.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were cover bands, musicians, and they would tour and they would play church halls and things in local venues, but they were really fucking good, and they became sort of their own phenomenon here in Ireland. And they would have horn sections and all this stuff. They were really, really good. But one of these guys, there was a guy in the town called Winston, and he's an old guy, and he's a bass player. And he came into my shop, and we became friends, and he would bring me a bass from his collection. He said, check this out. And it would be a Fender or something or other, or a Rickenbacker or something or other, or some custom thing. And he brought in, he said, I'll bring you in my favourite next time. I said, that'll do. So he comes in, I can't even remember what it was, or some through neck thing, Ibanez or something, I can't remember. And he says, plug it in there. And the only thing I had in the store at the time was a little sort of like 15-watt practice amp. I'd sold whatever it was that I had before. And he went, that's shit. He says, you can't play this through that. I says, well, it's all I'm sorry, Winston, that's all I fucking have. He says, no. He says, I'll be back. So he comes back 20 minutes later and he walks into this shop with this piece of shit head. But it was the case that was the piece of shit. It was just made up of bits of plywood nailed together very badly. But the amp itself was the Kelly. And he plugged the bass into it and started, and I was like, and he said, what do you think of the bass? I said, yeah, it's great. Tell me about this amp. So he started to talk to me about the amp, and he said, do you like that? I went, yeah. Now, this guy's about 75. I said, yeah, I really do, Winston. I like it very much. And he says, I didn't think you young people were into valve amps and all. I don't know if the same thing happened in America, but there was an awful trend here when everything started to go digital. Yeah. And valve stuff get fucking just threw in bins. Recording studios were throwing stuff in skips just, to replace it with the latest. And now the clamour to get those back. Right. So he thought that sort of attitude still prevailed, which, it didn't last very long, thank God. But I said, no, I really like that, Winston. He says, listen, it's only in my attic. Do you want it? I went, well, yeah, I would like to buy it from you. And he said, just take it. I went, no. Oh, wow. Let me buy it. I really want to buy it from you. And he went, okay. He says, give me £50. It was about $60 or something like that. I said, listen, Winston, I will give you $50 or £50 all day long. I said, but I'm telling you now, I am robbing you, giving you $50 for this. And he went, no, take it. He says, I know that you'll treat it right. You'll give it a good life. I went, okay. So I was going out to rehearsal that night now I was in this other band with this guy, Tommy. This is before the Bonnevilles. And I phoned Tommy. He says, I got this fucking amp. And he says, right, let's go. So we went out and plugged it into a Marshall cabinet, 4x12. Holy shit. It was just the growl that I wanted, that I dreamed about. This is it. So that amp, I used it for years, and then it got into, I used to, whenever we go on tour, I would carry it as my hand luggage on the plane. And then we were getting a flight to do a couple of one-night stands in Portugal from Dublin, and the stewardess, who was having a bad fucking day, obviously, said that I wasn't allowed, or the stewardess, the check-in girl, said I wasn't allowed to bring it on the plane as hand luggage. I had to go in the hold. I said, this is a 50-year-old amp. Yeah. It is very valuable to me. And no. Yeah. He says, well, you're not getting on the plane. So it went into the baggage hold. And it was the worst flight of my life. We got to the other side. We landed in Lisbon, in Portugal. And we went to that carousel, and it just came crashing down through the carousel. Shit. Yeah. There was no visible damage, but we went to the venue, did our sound check. We were at this, I plug it in and I turn it on and it fires up, and we're like, okay, we think this might have gotten away with us. So we do our sound check. And the guy comes in and he says, right, guys, there's food for you. And he said, okay, we'll come now. And we walk off the stage, and the DJ in the club, he looks at me and he goes, he says something in Portuguese. And I look around, and the amp is on fire on the stage. Wow. Fuck. Yeah. It's a fucking nightmare. So I brought it home, brought it to an engineer who didn't know what he was doing. It worked okay for a few months. It blew again, didn't go on fire. Brought it to another engineer. He fixed it. It lasted a bit. It was better. Still wasn't right. Still never sounded as good. Yeah. Each time I'm bringing it to these engineers, it's £200-300, and it's adding up. Yeah. And at this point, I was into this thing for like $2 or $3 grand, just getting it fixed, knowing that.
So you have paid for it.
Yeah. So I have paid for it. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going. I can't afford to keep throwing this money at this thing. So someone says to me, bring it to, there's a guy in Belfast called Leif Bodnarchuk. He's a Canadian-Irish guy. He was Leonard Cohen's tech guy.
Oh, really?
When he was touring, yeah. And when he came back after he lost all his money, it was Leif that went out with him. So he's from Belfast here. Huh. So I brought it up to him, and I tried. The weird thing is, I actually tried to bring it to him when it first broke after the Portuguese trip, but I couldn't find his fucking house. Right. So I couldn't. He was living in a different place at the time, and I had to go out there. It was about an hour from my home, but I couldn't find his place. So I went, fuck it, and I turned around and went home. Brought it to somebody else. Hence, 2-3 grand later, Leif then opens up an actual business studio, a workshop in Belfast called the Rock and Roll Workshop, and I bring it to him, and he loves odd things.
Yeah.
And he sees you coming and he goes, ooh, what have you brought me? and he's got this weird sort of fucked up hybrid Belfast Canadian accent going on. It's great. He says, well, here you go. And I tell him the thing. And he goes, oh. He says, do you have any schematics? I said, I have a schematic. I'll send it to you. So I send him the schematic and I phone him up the next day. I said, well, what do you think? He says, this schematic has absolutely no resemblance to what's actually in this box. so it's practically useless. He says, but I think I've figured it out. I went, right, okay. He says, how much is this going to cost me? He says, it's going to cost about £500. And I went, okay. And he says, this is it. This is it. I can't. I will do this. This is the last time. If this doesn't work, this amp is for the bin. And I did it, and it's been working ever since.
Wow.
Thank God. And he did a great job. I bring it up to him every twice a year or whatever, and he just gives it a bit of a tickle and dusts everything off and replaces what needs replaced, which isn't much, which is great. So to answer your question, it's a really long answer to a short question.
No, it's a great story.
Thank you. So we go in to record. We're in recording the third album, Our Pierce My Heart, so No Law and Lurgan. So I'm in there. And the guy, Mike, who is the guy who records our albums now, he's got this drawer full of bits, and I go into it, and in it is a Maestro Fuzz, an original one.
Oh, really?
That is literally, he doesn't even know if it works. It's never been used. He says, I can't actually remember anybody using it. I said, does it work? He says, I don't know. I said, where did you get it? He says, fuck it, I can't remember. So I pull this fuzz out, and it is a really old, basic one. It's like, I don't know what model, but I mean, the second model, the third model, it's really, really early. And it's got no battery snapping on it. We cover, so we put the battery, it's been modded to take a battery. We put a battery on it, and it's just got this fucking growl of a tone.
Yeah.
It's just that, it's that amp and that pedal.
Okay.
Together. I think we put a little bit of, we started on a blues driver. So it starts into a blues driver, and then it goes into but the fuzz pedal gives the big gain kick into the Kelly amp. So that's the answer to the question.
Wow.
So Kyle, it's that easy. Just get a Kelly amp, take it to Portugal, set it on fire.
No problem.
Bring it back.
Kyle is a huge gearhead. He's going to be looking and looking if I know it.
I'll contact Mike and see if I can get a photograph of that thing. I might have a photograph of it. I'm sure I must have.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and if I get one, I'll send it on to you. You can send it to Kel.
Right on.
Right on. Yeah, I love that. He's going to appreciate that story.
For sure.
That's a good one. So what else you guys got going on in the works?
Just glad to say that there's gigs coming in now.
Yeah.
So April's booked up, and May is looking good, and June's looking good, and we have a Scandinavian tour booked for October.
Nice.
We're currently rebooking a European tour that we cancelled. It was supposed to go off in March, but I don't know how things went down in America, but we went from COVID red alert to fucking it's gone.
Yep.
Almost overnight.
Yeah.
It felt like that. And again, my situation with the job, I just before Christmas, I said, Chris, I can't commit to this tour in March. And it's a real fucking shame because it was a great tour, 3 weeks, and a lot of work had gone into getting it booked. And I can't walk away from this job. My employer's not going to say, yeah, it's okay for you to go on some adventure in Europe for 3 weeks and then come back at your leisure.
Right.
So I had to make a decision just before Christmas, but it turned out we could have fucking done it, and but it's okay. And I was a bit concerned that the guy that booked it would sort of fall out with us, but he didn't at all. He was really great. He was very gracious, and he just said, "Yeah, that's fine. I understand." Yeah. So he's actually contacted us. He says, "Can I rebook this? Can we get going with this?" And so that's happening. Don't know when. I'm writing for a new album.
Oh yeah.
So we've got a lot of tracks. It's very early. It'll be a long while before they're done. Mm-hmm. We've a lot of tracks good to go, or in various stages of completion. Mm-hmm. I'm doing some solo writing stuff for various little projects. I'm writing for some songs for a whiskey brand in Dublin for an online campaign.
All right.
Yeah, it's really cool. Right. It's called Liberty's Whiskey. They came to me last year, I think, and in lockdown, he said, a guy called Darren, and he said, yeah, did you have any Bonnevilles tracks lying about that you don't use or didn't make it onto an album or anything we could use for this campaign? And I says, no, we don't. I says, what is it? And he told me what he wanted, and I said, I could, it's in the middle of lockdown, I have no money. Yeah, I have a studio. I have a studio in the back of my garden. I built the studio. Mm-hmm. I says, do you want me to write you something? And he went, yeah. I can't remember. He gave me 500, 600 pounds or something like that. Huh? He says, there's the budget. He says, if you want it, it's yours. He says, what do you? He says, give me a minute of music, something sexy and Bonnevilles and bluesy and dark. I went, oh, that's easy. Huh. So I did it. He comes back to me a few weeks later and he says, listen, everybody loves the music and it sparked a whole campaign, so we're going to go along with this, so do give us another 4 of those. So I'm writing for that, and the budget, and there's more money, and so I've got that going, and so yeah, right on. Starting to get work in, which is great, and really, really happy and privileged. And the thing I'll say about this is, going into the whole lockdown situation, again, I don't know what your experience of it was in America, how that went for you, but
it sucked.
Yeah. I enjoyed it at the start because we had a really nice summer. And we got to hang out with my kids and my wife, and we all just lay about, and every day we were just drinking all the time, and but that quickly lost its shine, and then 2 years into that shit, and you're like, oh, this is fucking terrible. Right. The thing that I've taken from it is getting back out into the world has given me a reinvigorated thirst to do more of this. When it's taken from you so easily, you realize, no. I'm going hard into this now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing you didn't sell them. I don't like whiskey. Isn't that one of your tracks?
It is. Well, that song is. People think I don't like whiskey. Mm-hmm. No, the record, the whiskey brand definitely didn't want that one, but. But that song's actually, it's sort of a little bit of a tribute to Robert Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Because he died from poisoned whiskey, according to the stories. And so is it all right? And I can't remember the lyrics off the top of my head, but that's sort of what that is a tribute to him. So people think I don't like whiskey. I'm very fond of whiskey. The problem is that whiskey doesn't seem to like me very much.
Right.
And that's, again, another song we have, The Whiskey Lingers. Yeah. So that it's a trite little thing that is the gateway into a bigger song. Mm-hmm. But The Whiskey Lingers is, for me, if I drink whiskey, I still feel drunk the next day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what that is, All right.
We'll have to try Liberty whiskey sometime.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Twist my arm.
Yeah. I can assure you, it is very fucking nice. It's great whenever you get, we've got, this is now the 3rd whiskey brand that has sponsored us. And they're all boutique and very lovely, expensive whiskies, and we've had Sailor Jerry's rum. has sponsored us.
Oh yeah, I like their rum actually.
Yeah, I like it very much myself. And the Kraken rum.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I've got some in my bar right now.
It's gorgeous. So Kraken rum, Sailor Jerry's rum, Dead Rabbit whiskey, Liberty's whiskey, and there was another whiskey. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's just sort of social media shit. Can we send you some?
Yeah.
Can we send you some whiskey?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure.
Yeah. Fucking.
By the way, any of those distillers, if you'd like to sponsor Undetermined the podcast by sending us a bottle,
we were very welcome.
Absolutely.
We're highly interested.
Yeah.
Just let us know. We'll work for booze.
For sure.
That's a t-shirt right there.
You guys have some great t-shirts, by the way. You guys merch in general.
Yeah.
Talk about making some money, right? Where can people get some of your merch?
Yeah, okay. Our website.
Yeah.
Obviously. So that's the Bonnevilles.co.uk. So if you go there, there's a web store there, and we've got lots of t-shirts and records and a few CDs, things like that. And we do a lot of t-shirts. It's great, actually. Again, it's one of the things I remember back in Belfast in the sort of early noughties and mid noughties.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the Detroit garage bands were coming over. The White Stripes and the Sights and the Dirt Bombs and the Detroit Cobras and all these bands, and they were very highly influential to me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The Von Bondies, I loved the Von Bondies.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a venue up in Belfast called Aunt Annie's. I remember going in there to see the Sights. And it's a weird thing. We still had the hangover from the Troubles, from the war thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of were doing our own little wee weird thing that wasn't really working with the way that we conducted ourselves with our business. Let me say that.
Yeah.
I don't mean me personally. I mean us as a people, the bands that were going out.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't do merch and we didn't do records and CDs, and we didn't really. But I remember going to this gig and there was the Von Bondies sitting on the door.
Mm-hmm.
Selling their own merch, and this blew my fucking mind because their first album, Lack of Communication, it's called. I still adore that record. So this band to me were stars, and there they were taking turns. There was 4 of them, and you could tell, and they would do a bit on the merch, and then one would go, and then one would come back, and the lead singer, the star of the band, and he would go and do the merch for a bit. And then I saw the Sights in the same venue, seen them twice, and I was in a band called Perline and the Soledad Brothers and bands like that, and they were all doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, maybe these guys are onto something. Maybe we should be doing this. So when I started our band, with our first fee, it was 200. We took 200 quid, and I took my fee of it. I give £100 to the drummer. It wasn't Chris. The first band gig we ever played as the Bonnevilles. Chris wasn't the drummer. I gave him 100 quid or less fuel money.
Right.
And I took my 100 quid and I went and got 10, 15 t-shirts screen printed from the first show. So just right from the very start, it was always a very important part of our business, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool looking stuff. Sure.
Yeah, I definitely would like to get some. Do you have any distribution in the U.S.?
You got a good Bandcamp.
There's a Bandcamp. Yeah, we have that as well. We do our shipping to America. We do our shipping all over the world, so it's fine. The only thing is the actual shipping prices on the store. Sometimes it can be very off-putting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it slowed me down. We have a lot of friends in the UK and Ireland, and I want to order stuff all the time, and that shipping is just killer.
Yeah.
Fuck, it's more than the fucking merch sometimes.
Yeah.
We're the same. We go on to Alive Records, our record label. If anybody wants to buy any of our records, obviously Alive Records are based in LA.
Okay.
So if you're in the US, you can buy direct from those guys.
Okay.
And it won't. But if any things like t-shirts and stuff, we do that direct ourselves.
Any other questions you want to cover, Matt, or anything?
Wow, man, I think I've had a good time.
I do. I think it's great.
Seriously, and Is it Andy, Andrew? I don't even know.
Oh, Andy's fine. My stage name is Andrew.
Okay.
But Andy is great.
Gotcha. We really appreciate you coming on, man. And seriously, like, been one of the best experiences I've had musically in a while. Just really you've been my dishwashing music, and that's a compliment. It doesn't sound like it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry I didn't discover you sooner.
Well, we got there in the end. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm delighted.
Yeah.
It's really nice to talk to you guys. I hope, we'd be able to meet in person at some point in the future.
Oh, I'd love it.
That'd be great. All right. Everybody, thanks for listening to Undetermined the Podcast. Special guest, Andrew McGibbon, the Bonnevilles. Check them out.
Yeah.
Badass band. You're going to dig it.
For sure.
Everybody, have a great week. Andrew, thank you again.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, guys, and take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.